Hello, I'm going to give you a few thoughts on how to do level checks. First of all, do you really need to do a level check? Sometimes you do, sometimes not, but the most important thing is it's a way of getting people in to a trial lesson and they kind of expect a level check, or people like the idea of, some people like the idea of being able to compare themselves against some imagined average or ability. I wouldn't bother personally doing level checks with kids. You find out how old they are and stick them into the relevant age group, because almost certainly their age affects their ability to learn much more than their actual ability. The exceptions might be returnees from from abroad. Then you might have a special class for that, so there's no real need to do a level check. You just once you've met the kid and talked to them. But if you've got an adult student who says, or a prospective student who wants to have a level check, that's when you might do one. First thing is, what kind of materials do you have that you intend to teach from? If you know that, and then you know what kinds of grammar and language structures and vocabulary, then you cater your questions around that. So, for example, if you've got a textbook, let's say a beginner's textbook, even for adults, it might, the first lessons will be introduce yourself, hello. So make a question, hello, tell me about yourself. And if they can't speak much, then you say, oh, how old are you? Or it can be personal, but where do you live? Simple present tense questions. And then once they answer those, okay, then you move on to harder things that are maybe in a more advanced book, so like present perfect. Have you ever been to another country? And then, are they able to give a full answer? Are they able to ask you some questions? And you can gauge how fluent they are and if they understand you. And the moment that a conversation starts to break down, you go, okay, they can't really handle this level of language. So if you've got a range of stuff that you teach from, and you know the kinds of grammar structures that are in those textbooks, you can make a little sort of cheat sheet, starting with the easy questions first, going down to the harder questions. And as I say, once they get to a point where they can't answer or can't give a good conversation, you can say, I think you're sort of lower intermediate, or you are an intermediate speaker, but you have a few problems with conditional tenses. If you were a rich man, would you live in Japan? Where would you, those kinds of, if you had, then would you have had? Those kinds of things. There isn't, in a way it's kind of cynical, because what you're really doing is you're trying to sell them a course. And most of the time you can tell within 2 minutes what kind of level somebody is with a bit of experience. Sometimes you get a student who thinks they're higher than they really are, so it's useful to go through the questions, and then you can say, actually, you're not as high level as you think, you made these particular errors. Another thing to note is these are not lessons, they are skill. You're not there to teach them in a level check, you're there to test. And in fact, it kind of goes against the grain, but you're trying to find problems. So you're hoping to find a question they can't answer or answer badly, and you just make a note of that. And if you want, at the end of the test, at the end of the conversation, you can say, okay, I think you're this level because you made a few mistakes here and here. And if you want, you could give a quick lesson why, and show how good you are by explaining the errors that they made and how you would go about fixing it. When I used to work for Berlitz many moons ago, in a different century, the level checks were a blatant sales effort, and they said, try and find their problems so that you can sell them some course. And that is sort of true. We are in the business, but that is the purpose from the point of view of the teacher, is to find what problems the student has, so that you can then gear what you can offer them. More on that next week, on what you can offer people. I hope that's helpful. I hope you could hear me over the wind. Have a good one.